Well, hello everybody, and welcome to technically part 2 of Improved Operations for Increased Profit. My first session out of town, out of the studio, and it certainly has had its recording challenges, but I wanted to step right into the workflow and do this as a separate session for people who are interested in learning how to better communicate with their technicians and their customers. So we're calling this Improved Communications, and it has its own workbook to go along with that. So it is part of Improved Operations for Increased Profit, but also is a separate standalone session on increasing or improving communications. It's kind of like the graphic that we add here. I thought that was pretty creative to have somebody with a face into a hand and an ear out of that. But I guess the question is how good are we at communicating, and we may not be as good at communicating as we think we might be. Just going to step through the slides, and you do have your materials to go along with this, and you're going to follow along in the notes with the PowerPoint presentation itself. I'm a huge fan of the movie The Princess Bride, and I'm sure there's some people watching this that are as well, and probably the most famous line from that was inconceivable, but anyway, I love this. Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up, and if you've not seen the movie, I'd encourage you to watch it, but too often we say way too much and not enough. So anyway, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes in this, like I do when I'm training, and instead of recording it and starting each time, I just wanted to go right into the material, and if you're in a live class, you'd hear me make mistakes as well. Communication is much better in writing than it is verbally, and I just like this kind of graphic here on what am I supposed to do, and sometimes we think we made it clear to somebody, but we didn't necessarily make it as clear as we should. I did want to talk about something very important called the technician time per minute value, and you'll notice that red line across that. I tried and tried and tried to get rid of that, and I couldn't. So it was very interesting what PowerPoint can do sometimes, but let's step into it. Technician time per minute value. And I just based this on a $100 an hour labor rate. Some people listening to this are going to be a little less than 100, and some people in excess of 100, but I'd say the average is probably close to $100 for people participating in this. And we're just going to base this on a $100 an hour per labor rate and a 50% labor mix. And labor mix, what that really is saying that half the money that comes in your door should come from the sale of labor, and the other half should come from everything else that you sell. Now, unfortunately, not everybody's there. My experience is that most shops out there see more money from parts than they do from labor, and that shouldn't be the case. Oftentimes we sell labor without parts. Where we're doing an inspection on a vehicle, when we're doing a brake inspection, we're not selling parts at that time. Later on we are, when we're doing the labor to install the parts. We do diagnosis that may be a couple hours in the morning without any part sales. I had an interesting thought the other day. I wondered how much we see in part sales in the morning versus how much we see in part sales in the afternoon. And I would suspect if we were able to track that, we'd see that the first couple of hours is pretty light on the part sales, and the later part of the day, of course, would have much more parts. So the point is that we do sell labor without parts, and hardly ever do we sell parts without labor. When's the last time you sold a belt, a water pump, a starter, alternator over your counter? Some people have never done it, maybe once in a while. Maybe you were able to order a part for somebody that they couldn't get on their own and they needed it because they're part of the Corvette Club or something, but hardly ever do we sell parts without labor, and we often sell labor without parts, and labor should be, without a doubt, the highest gross profit of anything that we sell. Your gross profit on labor should be 70 to 75%, and your gross profit on parts should be about 50. Now, of course, not everybody's there, but the benchmark is 50. So we're running this exercise with an assumption that it's $100 an hour labor rate, and we are selling $100 an hour worth of labor and everything else to go along with that. So again, labor mix is 50% of the money that comes in your door should come from the sale of labor. And all you need to do is look at your income statement or your information on your shop management system and see what percentage of your sales came from labor. So if your sales were $100,000 in an average month, you should see about $50,000 in labor. And so if the labor rate's $100 an hour, you should be selling about the same in parts, sublet, tires, towing, shop supplies, and environmental fees. I know that red line looks like I crossed that out, but I did not. Just to be very clear, we're not just looking at labor versus part sales, we're looking at labor versus parts, sublet, tires, towing, shop supplies, and environmental fees. So you should be able to see, if you have a $100 an hour labor rate, about $200 an hour in overall sales. Now, that's not every hour. There are times we're selling labor without parts, and sometimes it's a part-heavy job where we're installing a transmission or a very expensive electrical part. So this isn't based on each individual hour. And if you tracked each individual hour to see what the ratio is, it would kind of drive you crazy. It's kind of micromanagement. So the idea is to track it over the period of a month. A good scenario would be a month at a time, and take what your revenue was and how many hours you sold and see what your revenue per hour is. But a lot of shops out there are operating at about 50-50 mix. So if their labor rate was about $100 an hour at the end of the month, they would see about half the money comes from labor, the other half comes from everything else. Calculating the technician's time per minute value would mean that if you're going to get $100 an hour in labor and $100 an hour in everything else that you sell, your revenue in the hour would be $200, and we divide that by 60 minutes in the hour, and that tells us that we're at approximately $3.33 a minute. Now I'm going to be bouncing around just a little bit here. I am on the road. I'm actually currently in Ontario, and the downside of that is that I don't have access to my full-size monitors. I used to at the time, which is always nice, but I'm working on a much smaller screen, and so I'm going to have to bounce around just a little bit on a smaller laptop screen. So most of you that have seen my training before have seen this chart. I'm not going to belabor it for those of you that have seen it, but I like to look at the big picture first. And when we're talking about improved communications and using a work order rack flow system and considering your technician's time is worth about $3.33 a minute, of course you could do the calculation yourself pretty simply. Take your labor rate, multiply it by 2, divide it by 60 minutes, and you're going to see the technician time per minute value. The numbers that I typically see are somewhere between $3.75 and $4 a minute, depending on the labor rate of the people in that particular class. But I want to take a look at the sales potential, and whether you're an average shop, an above average shop, or an awesome shop, your technicians are there approximately 168 hours in a month. So we're looking at the sales per month per technician, and so whether you're an average shop, an above average shop, or an awesome shop, your technicians are going to be there about 40 hours a week and about 4.2 weeks in an average month. Some a little less, some a little more, but the average is 168. In an average shop out there, they are 60% productive, which means they spend 60% of their day working on stuff that makes money. The rest of the day is wasted. The efficiency is simply how fast the technician is, and the hours produced are 100. So in a shop where they're only 60% productive, which is many shops, unfortunately, and the technician, the book calls for an hour takes them an hour. Now I've had people challenge me on that and say the technicians aren't 100% efficient, but according to time estimating guides, the average of 3 technicians doing a job, that would become the time estimating guide. And if the work is sold correctly. Now, if we are taking in a job that's not routine because it's an older vehicle or it's got tremendous amounts of mileage on it, or possibly it's been abused or been in an accident, or there's a lot of rust or whatever. I'm in Ontario, Canada right now, and a lot of rust in this area. A major snowstorm today, and they're out putting a whole bunch of salt on the road, and that certainly causes rust. Well, a lot of those vehicles are not routine. They're non-routine. And I guess the question to ask you here to make it clear what we're talking about is how many vehicles have you had in your shop that you'd wish you'd never seen in your entire life? And so sometimes we're working on something that is not routine, but we've quoted the customer a routine task based on the time estimating guides. And our time estimating guides based on routine or non-routine tasks. They're pretty much based on routine tasks. So when the job becomes non-routine because something's wrong with the automobile, not the tech or us, but the automobile, we need to make adjustments. So if we sell the work correctly, the average technician should be able to make the time and be 100% efficient. That only produces 100 hours out of 168. That's really bad at $100 an hour labor rate. With the sales and everything of parts and sublet, etc., all the extras, we would do about $20,000 a month. In an above average shop, 168 hours, their techs are still 40 hours a week, 4.2 weeks in a month, and they're 75% productive. They spend more time working on income producing work. The technicians are faster for lots of reasons. We've covered that in other workshops in a lot more detail. But they're faster because of tools, because of equipment, because of experience. Maybe we're selling more maintenance. There's a lot of reasons. and that produces 141.12 hours, which is a lot better than 100.8, but this shop had technicians that were there 168 hours. And we only sold 141 of them. I mean, if you bought 168 spark plugs, you wouldn't be satisfied to sell 100 and have none left on the shelf. And 168 spark plugs and selling 141 and having none left wouldn't be nice either, but it's a lot better than only having 100 sold. And with the sales of everything else included is $28,000. So this shop is doing about $8,000 a month per technician more than the other shop. And at the Awesome Shop, they're there again 40 hours a week, 4.2 weeks in a month, and they're 90% productive. So they spend 90% of their day working on income producing work. Just for the record, for those of you that have not seen this before, the highest that number could possibly be is 100%. It cannot exceed 100%. They would spend 100% of the day working on income-producing work, which would mean they'd spend every single minute of every single day working on stuff that makes money, and that's certainly not going to happen. I've always said in classes that we'd have to have non-smoking technicians and install catheters, so 90% is a good number to spend 90% of the day. If I'm at your shop for 168 hours a month, I cannot possibly spend 178 hours working on cars. The highest I could possibly have spent of the time I'm there is 168, and our goal is 90%, so only 10% of the day is wasted with things like coffee breaks and smoke breaks and waiting for parts, waiting for work, that kind of stuff. Efficiency, the average Awesome technician is able to beat the time because of training, again, experience. They've got some really good tools and equipment. We've got some great resources, Mitchell On Demand, ALLDATA, Identifix. We've got lots of extra resources to get the job done faster. We actually produce more hours than we actually had available, and we can do that because it's not tangible. If you bought 168 tires, you couldn't sell 189 of them. The maximum you could sell is 168, but that's because it's a tangible item. Time is not tangible. It's an intangible. It's actually invisible, and so we can sell more than we had because we are able to be more efficient, and we've paid money to send our technicians to training to become more efficient. We've invested in resources. The point is, the more productive and the more efficient the shop is, the more the shop is going to make. So this shop's doing about $37,000 a month. So what's the difference between the $20,000 and the $37,000? It's really simple. It's only two things. We spent more time working on cars, and we were faster at it. That really is what it's all about. There's more money made and understanding time, the technician's time, the labor being sold. And a lot of people have a major labor leak, and they're buying 168 hours and selling less of them. And other shops are simply buying the same number of hours. Their techs are there the same number, but we're selling more time only because of two things. In this case, we see $9,576 a month more simply because we spent more time working on cars and faster at it. We work the same number of hours and the exact same labor rate. And the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is because what we're going to be looking at here has a lot to do with increasing productivity and increasing efficiency. And as a trainer with 29 years of experience and working with thousands, tens of thousands of shops actually over the years across Canada and the US, I see a lot of shops that are average, some that are above average, and of course some that are awesome. And I see financial statements of people who are doing 37, in fact is better than that, sales per month per technician. And we can bring this into be 3 technicians. And what I'd like to do is just make that 3 technicians, which is 504 hours in a month. And just so we can do a quick comparison, is 504 for this shop and 504 for this shop. So in an average shop with 3 technicians, in an average shop they're going to do 60 grand a month. In an awesome shop they're going to do 113,000 a month, a difference of $28,000 simply because they spent more time working on income producing work and faster at it. Sorry, I should have scrolled that down a little bit. This number is the difference between this number here and this number, but this number here, the 52,000, is the difference between the awesome shop and the average shop, so 52,000. In an average year, a technician is at a shop 1,960 hours in a month, and so let's make it so we can compare that. And I like to start this way with this session because I want to show you the carrot and show you the value of the information we're going to be covering. And so this shop here in a year could do $235,000 per tech. This shop, $441,000. Again, that's labor and everything else to go along with that. And I should be clear for people who have not seen this before, if your technicians are more productive, they're spending more time working on income-producing work, and they're faster at it, we're going to sell more hours. And when we sell more hours, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, we are going to sell more parts. We're going to sell more sublet, more tires, more towing, more shop supplies, and more environmental fees, because the more labor we sell, the more of everything else we sell, labor drives our business. And so the better you are at selling labor, the better you're going to be at selling absolutely everything else that you sell. And let's just bring this into a full year with 3 shops. The average technician isn't really there 6,000 hours in a year, because they are, they're not there 2,000 hours a year, which would be 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, because we have some time off for vacations and holidays. And so what I'd like to do is take that put it into a year, and the average shop in a year is going to be a little less than that. Depends on where you're at. If you're in Canada, it's going to be a little lower. We tend to have more days off than people in the US. People in the UK, we've got some clients in the UK who, similar to Canada, we have about 2 weeks paid vacation in a year, and we also have approximately 2 weeks of statutory holidays, etc. And so in the US, it's a little closer to that number with less days off, because, well, it's sad, but Americans spend more days working per year than everybody else. So 6,000 hours is going to be a little bit of a stretch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that down to 557, 60, whatever. You can calculate it for your own shop, how many hours your technicians are there in a year. And this spreadsheet is included in your notes, so you can do it for yourself. And so we've got 5,760 hours in a year, a little bit of time off for vacations and holidays. The point is that this shop is going to do about 691,000 with the exact same number of technicians and the exact same labor rate and the exact same number of hours worked. This shop does 967. This shop does 1.296. A difference of $328,000 a year, which is a lot of money, simply because they spent more time working on income-producing work and faster at it. And I know that sounds simple, and it's not simple, because there's so many factors involved here. But I just wanted to show that to you, because before we get into looking at the material about, better communication, I wanted to show you the carrot for that. So because your technician's time is worth approximately $3.33 a minute, plus you've got your fact that you can do a lot more money in sales based on productivity and efficiency, then the better communication that happens, the better the shop is going to operate. So let's get back into this. And sorry, I got to go back here. Here's my question that I would ask in a live class. How many problems are caused in your shop because of a lack of communication between your customers and your advisors, where what the customer said is not what the advisor heard, or what the customer meant isn't what the advisor wrote down? There's so many problems caused simply because of a lack of communication between the customer and the advisor. Sometimes we're busy. There's a lot of reasons we don't listen. Sometimes we're distracted by the last customer. We're distracted by technicians standing there wanting our attention. We're distracted by noise that's happening. We're distracted because the phone's ringing. We're distracted because we're thinking about the estimate that we just did and if it's accurate. And so there's a lot of distractions. And according to Dr. Richard Swenson, my favorite author, we're interrupted 232 times a day as a manager. So not just an advisor, but a manager, but that's a lot of interruption. And so sometimes the listening skills are not great because of that. And so back to the question, how many problems are caused in your shop because of lack of communication between the customer and the advisor? And then the advisor and the technician, where the advisor thinks what the advisor said was this and heads the technician into the wrong direction at $3.33 a minute. So again, how many problems are caused in your shop because of a lack of communication between your customer and the advisor, the tech and the advisor back to the customer? Now, I've asked that question many, many times, thousands upon thousands in classes, and the answer sometimes, I should say, is all of them. And I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think every problem in a shop is caused because of a lack of communication. There's other things, but there are a lot of problems that can happen. And again, with the technician's time at $3.33 a minute and the difference in sales of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with the same number of technicians, it's important that we improve the communication. Why? So we can increase productivity, have our technicians working better on income-producing work, spend more of the day working on stuff that makes money. In reality, there's only two kinds of time in your day. There's making money time and there's losing money time, and that's all there really is. We're either making money or losing money. There's no neutral. So when a technician's standing around, they got nothing to do, that's losing $3.33 a minute. And when they're working on income-producing work and we're selling the things to go along with that, we're making $3.33 a minute. So back to the question, I just want to reiterate it. How many problems are causing your shop because of a lack of communication between the customer and the advisor and the tech and the advisor back to the customer? And I think a really good analogy to use here is the fast food industry or the coffee industry, where they've improved the communications from verbal communication to written communication. And we'll just use Starbucks as an example. You pull up to a Starbucks drive-thru and you speak through a microphone, and a person inside hears what you say and prepares what you've asked for, and they hand it to you. Now, years ago, whether it was like a Tim Hortons up here in Canada or a McDonald's or Harvey's or Wendy's or whatever restaurant, fast food you've gone to, years ago, we used to pull up and we'd speak through a microphone, and oftentimes it wasn't very clear. Rah, 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 you'd hear something like that, and you'd hear them talk back to you. But the microphones have improved, the speakers have improved, but they've also reduced verbal communication down to written communication. And a quick analogy I'll give you is years ago I was driving in the US and it was late at night. I wanted to drive, stay awake, but I didn't want to be awake too much when I got to my destination. So instead of getting a 4-shot Americano, which is espresso and hot water, I decided to get a small one. So normally I'd get a grande, and that day I got a tall, which is kind of funny that the smallest beverage you can buy at Starbucks is the tall. But anyway, so I pull up to the drive-thru and I had to ask a question because I didn't know. And oftentimes our customers come in and ask us questions because they don't know. And I simply said, how many shots of espresso are in a tall Americano? And she said 2. I said, great, I'll have 1 decaf and 1 regular. And when I pulled up to the drive-thru, she went to hand me 2 cups of coffee, both talls, of course, but 1 decaf, 1 regular. Now, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, because it's 2 shots, I'll have 1 of those shots that's regular and 1 that's decaf. Now, if their system was better in those days, that would not have happened today, because when you pull up now, and I'm just using Starbucks as an example, but whether it's a fast food restaurant or a coffee place, you pull up and there's a sign there, and it starts to print off, or we see it in front of us on a sign that illuminates what we've said, what they believe we've said. They're typing it in. And so if I'd gone through and asked for 1 regular, 1 decaf, and 2 cups of coffee showed up on that screen, and the price of 2, I would have said, oh, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is 1 cup of coffee with 1 shot of regular and 1 shot of decaffeinated. The point is the fast food industry wants to reduce how much food, beverage gets wasted, and so they've put in an electronic system. I don't know what that costs, but I'm sure it's a huge investment to go from just a microphone to the screens, but they've done that for the accuracy of the order. And then the information back to the cook in this case, or the person making the coffee, it's electronic as well. Now, years ago, we'd go into a restaurant, and McDonald's, if you remember, you'd say Big Mac, large fries, and they would yell back to the cook, Big Mac and large fries. Now, that's not the way it works anymore either. And even when you go into a fast food restaurant, McDonald's we use as an example, and as you're telling them what you want, it's showing up on a little screen so you can see what they're typing. And what they've done effectively is to protect the value of their burger or coffee or food, and they have reduced verbal communication to written communication. And they don't yell that order back to the cook anymore. It goes back electronically, and they're looking at a computer monitor, and it's telling them what the order is. And so they've come a long way in improving communication. And I believe that we need to do the exact same thing. We need to get better information from our customers, and I believe we should get that in writing. I believe when a customer comes in and they have a noise on their vehicle, now sometimes they try to recreate the noise with their mouth, which is always entertaining, but I think we should get them to fill in questionnaires. And you see in your handouts with this, we've given you some questionnaires for the customer to fill in. And by the way, these aren't just important when you're on the counter, but when a customer is going to drop off the vehicle in the morning. And I've seen one shop, in fact, take each of the questionnaires that we had and put it into one form where it's got the noise questionnaire and the heating and cooling system questionnaire, etc. And so the customer just looks and sees which particular area it is. And it was a 2-page form. I thought it was pretty neat. But all you need to do is have the customer fill in that information. You could have in your night drop box when the customer says they're going to be coming in. Usually we have an idea the customer's coming in. Sometimes there's keys and no instructions, and we know what that's like. But in most cases, the customer says they're going to drop off the vehicle. One thing that you can do is have these forms on your website and say to the customer, okay, we have a great drivability form that's on our website. It's designed to save the technician time and save you some money. And if you'd like to fill that in and bring it in the morning with your keys and put it in the night drop box, that's going to help save you some money and save you some time. You can have them pull it off the website. You can email them that information if you'd like. You could have it on your drive-through. Sorry, not your drive-through, but your back to the fast food in your Dropbox. But you can also have it on the counter for the customer to fill in. So when they come in, they've got a noise problem. We have a short noise questionnaire that's designed to save the technician time and save you some money. I think you always need to let them know why they're filling in that information. And it's designed to improve the communication and save them some money. And it could be if it's a drivability problem, etc. So getting better written communication from the customer to the advisor is a great approach, and that's why in your notes I've given you some of the questionnaires to go along with that. And then that information goes right to the technician. So it's not the interpretation from the advisor to the technician at $3.33 a minute, but it's the exact information from the customer. And one thing I'd like to be clear on is you don't just say to the customer, here's this form, fill it in, bring it back to me. Now, if it's in the drive box or drop box, then that's what's going to happen. But I suggest that you do it at the counter with them, give them the pen, and sometimes you need to explain some of the things on the form. But I think the pen should always be in the customer's hands, so the technician's getting the information direct from the customer. And so we provide that information to the technician. So when we get into the work order rack flow system part of this presentation, I suggest that you include the forms by the customer, from the customer, filled in by the customer, with the work order to the technician. And you can say C attached noise questionnaire, C attached heating and cooling system questionnaire, C attached drivability questionnaire. And it works extremely well to help the technician understand what the customer is saying, again, without the interpretation of the advisor. And then the technician to your advisor, the technician can go through and say, I've gone through this form and this is what I have found. So they go through the symptoms. Basically what they're doing is we're telling them what the symptoms are. Getting them in writing from the customer is really helpful. It can't happen all the time, but it can happen a lot of the time. And it allows us to provide the information to the technician and then back from the technician to the advisor. So the technician saying we've gone through this form, and basically it's in a nutshell really what it is the customer is telling you what the vehicle is doing that it shouldn't, or what it's not doing that it should, and then we give that information, symptoms, directly to the technician in writing, and then of course the advisor back to the customer because you have the information in writing back from your tech. Now some of you listening to this are using some awesome shop management systems, I should say, and a lot of that information is covered electronically from the counter to the back, and also from the technician back to the counter, which is great. Now, you still need some kind of work order rack flow system because we still need to deal with the keys. Until that issue gets dealt with, we still need to be able to have information about the vehicle, but the keys to go along with that exact situation. And so we need to make sure that the keys are I remember being a service advisor and wondering where the keys were. Yes, the keys, and the tech couldn't find the keys, or we couldn't find the keys, or the keys were in the car, or the customer comes in to pick up their vehicle and everything's ready to go. Here's your work order keys. Oh yes, you would need the keys. Let's find the keys. I'd love to know how many laundry companies that do uniforms and overalls or coveralls, whatever you want to call them, and finds them in the pockets of those. So again, back to this one last time. How many problems are caused in your shop because of a lack of communication between the customer, the advisor, the tech and the advisor, and the advisor back to the customers? and a really good system of written communications versus verbal communication is going to go a long way in solving those problems. So again, forms filled in by the customer provided to the technician. I just wanted to go through some steps to improve communication. This is something I've just recently added to this workshop, actually on the trip that I'm on. And I just wanted to take a look at some of the ways that we can improve communication. And again, lastly, just to go back to that, what we're talking about is the possibility of you going from an average shop to an above average shop to an awesome shop, but also the opportunity to protect your technician's time per minute value. So the extra revenue that you can see here is huge from that. So we suggest that you use a repair order rack system, and in your notes you have the system that we suggest. I'm going to go through it with you in this presentation. I do suggest that you use color-coded pouches. The system that I'm going to show you was originally designed to have color-coded paper clips that you could put on the work orders, or repair orders if you're in the US and Canada, and we call it a work order. So if you hear me use one of those words or use interchangeably, I wasn't keen on that system because it takes a little bit of, it's a little bit more cumbersome changing the paper clips. But what I suggest that you do is get the pouches that you can get from Staples. They're transparent. And if this was a live class in our training facility, for example, I would have the work order rack flow system right in front of me and the pouches. And those pouches are transparent, but the tops of them are like zippered closed, and there's different colors of those. And so you can get those at Staples, Office Max, Office Depot, whatever. And I believe the brand name is Winnable, and they have them that they're side pouches. They zip from the side or from the top. They also have the ones that fold down and use Velcro. Those are okay. I prefer the zippered ones, but depending on what they've got available. But the important thing is that they're color-coded, and each technician is assigned a color. And I do suggest that the pouches are the kind that I just mentioned because they are an actual pouch. They're not just a file folder. And when you put in your work order rack flow system, you need to make sure that it's a thick one, because some of the ones I've seen are so paper thin that you can't put the keys in the pouch. In fact, is all you can really put in those small slots of the rack system is the paper itself. There's not room for anything else. Some are so thin that you can't even put, the drivability questionnaires, etc. Oddly enough, the ones that I think are the best are actually from IKEA, and they're actually magazine racks that are relatively thick, very inexpensive. I think they're like $20 for a set of 3, something like that. And you'll see shortly how many of those racks you need. Going across, you need 5 for sure. Going down would depend on how many technicians you have. 3 is usually good enough in most shops, but if you need more than that, then you can add another set of racks below that. But the reason I like the ones from IKEA is they're very professional looking. They're thick enough to put the pouch into with the keys in the pouch. If you don't have it that way, then the keys have to be on the side of the rack, usually on a hook. And so as the paper moves, then you need to move the keys along with that. And the tech's taking the keys from the hook in the side and putting them back on the hook in the side. Well, I like the pouch idea because the keys are in one of 2 places. They're in that pouch or they're in the ignition. And I guess the question would be, how often have you never been able to find the keys? I know some shops that have had to make keys and get them cut. Of course, those ones from the dealership get pretty expensive, the keys that have the chip inside, which is the case with most of them that are out there now, and they're well over $100 each usually. So back to this, using a repair order rack system, I'm going to show you that. Use color-coded pouches. So as I'm talking about that, I'm going to suggest that you get those pouches that I just mentioned color-coded, and each technician is assigned a color, not just for the pouches, but for many of the other things that we do as well. So again, the pouches color-coded with strips along the top, so if it falls, it doesn't fall out of the file folder. It actually seals as you zip that across or close it with the Velcro, as I just mentioned, and they're pouches that are big enough to put the keys in. The next point I've already mentioned, but in those pouches there's enough room for the customer filled in applicable questionnaires for the type of job that they're bringing the vehicle in for. I also suggest that you use a color light system, and I've seen this in a few shops. I think it's brilliant. It works really well. It's oftentimes where the technician walks up and the advisor is really busy, and sometimes they're standing there at $3.33 a minute waiting for the advisor to get off the phone or finish with the customer or whatever it is that they're doing, and that wastes a lot of time. I was actually in a shop one time, actually one of the most well-run shops I've ever seen, although they were doing a lot of things right and a lot of things not so right. In fact, honestly, I've never seen the shop do so many things right and so many things wrong at the same time. I actually said that to the owner, but one time I was there, and they had two advisors in the little counter area, which was kind of crowded, but anyway, and I don't know, I don't make this stuff up. There was 4 technicians standing waiting for the advisors to get the next work order, and when I asked about that, they said, oh, no, the technicians are not allowed to take it. They have to wait and get assigned the job. And I mean, in that case, I know what it was. It was service advisors that were control freaks, and they didn't think that the technician could just grab the work order without their permission or telling them. But I tried to explain that you're still in control here because nobody touches the first rack in the order of that anyway except you. And so why should a technician walk up, wait for the advisor to hand them the next job where it could be in priority for the technician to grab? And I wanted to take a video of that. I think here's 4 technicians, $3, and well, their labor rate was higher, so it was $4 a minute. And I thought they're $16 every single minute waiting for advisors to get off the phone so they can get something that they could have just taken on their own. The light system is really simple. If a technician walks up and the advisor's busy, instead of waiting at $3.33 a minute, they just simply turn on a little light switch. One I saw was actually in York, Pennsylvania. I'd taught this in that city many years ago, and I went out to see this shop. And Phil, who is one of the best advisors I've ever seen in my entire life, I'd love to videotape him all day long and say this is how it's done. They had the light system, and all he did is took Christmas lights, really simple, cheap Christmas lights, and put them on a little board. And so when the technician walked up and the advisor was busy, they flipped the switch for the color of the light that they are, which is the same as the color pouches that we just talked about. So each technician is assigned a color, so we always know who it is. One shop went and took that even further, and they gave their technicians colors of ink that related to their color as well. So if the technician's color was green, they gave them a bunch of green pens. Now, I know some people here, you have communication that goes back and forth on tablets, which is fine. It's great, actually, if you can do that. For those of you that are not at that stage, then the color-coded system does work extremely well. And so whenever you see green writing, you know it's that person, that technician, let's say Kelly, myself, green, being Irish, I like the color green. And they simply know that every single time they see green ink, that was Kelly, and if it was purple ink, it was so-and-so. Don't suggest that you use pink. For those of you that have a technician who is colorblind, well, let's just leave them with black. Anyway, that works really well. So at that shop, the technician walks up, the advisor Phil is busy, they flip on the color of light that is theirs, and they head back to work. Now, they took it even one step further, and they actually added a little doorbell system. Now, you don't want one of those annoying bells. I'm sure we've all experienced going to a place like Starbucks or a restaurant. Last night it was actually at Wendy's, and there was beep, 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 beep. I'm assuming that meant the fries were done, but it went on and on and on and on. Or you go into a Starbucks and you hear the beeping, 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 beeping. Actually, their new system is reducing that. It's called the Clover X. They just started it this week. Anyway, so the coffee is made 1 cup at a time, so it doesn't require that. But when the coffee's time is up, the beep, 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 beep happens, and I personally find it extremely annoying. Actually, my daughter works at a Starbucks, and I said we should give you a little electrodes, and so when the coffee's done, we just give you a little electric shock, and then the customers don't have to hear that irritating noise. Of course, I was kidding, but again, Starbucks has improved that system as well to reduce the amount of distraction and irritation for the customers and the employees with the beeping. So you don't want something annoying, but just a short little doorbell or something like that, maybe a little chime. And so back to Phil's shop, he's at the counter, and up comes the technician. He is on the phone, which, by the way, he has a cordless headset, which I think is awesome. I know some people have tried them and don't like them. I think they're awesome. Cordless headset, so that they don't have to hold the phone with their ear and their chin. They can walk right back into the bay with the technician and ask them a question while they're on the phone with the part vendor or whatever it might be. Anyway, that's what they've got there. I think it works great. He loves it. He would never let you take that away if you try it. I'm sure he'd bite you because he loves it. But if he's busy, The technicians are not going to stand there at the window waiting for him. They simply ring the little doorbell, which Phil hears, and they turn on the green light, let's say. And so he knows that somebody needs his attention, but right now he's talking to a customer, or he's dealing with a customer, or he is on the phone or whatever, but he did hear the bell, and he turns around and sees which color of light came on and heads to the bay. Now, the color of light coming on could mean two things. It could mean that, look, in my rack, there's something there, or it simply means I need to talk to you. So Phil turns around, and if the color green light is on, but there's nothing in that technician's slot, then he knows that that means the technician needs to talk to him. And so instead of the technician standing there waiting, he goes back to work. Hopefully he's working on something else, and then Phil heads out to the bay. So they reduce how much time the technician spends standing at that counter, and again at $3.33 a minute. So that's what that means by the colored light system and the bell system. I guess maybe you can take that further and have a different chime for each technician, just like people have different ringtones on their phones. And then I already talked about this, assign a technician color. And the last part is bins for the technician's parts, which I've seen happen as well. They don't have to be color-coded. It's kind of cool if they are. But those big Rubbermaid bins that you can buy in Home Depot or some other place. And so when the parts come in for a specific technician, they go right into the bin. Unless it's exhaust, it's not going to fit in there, but in most cases they will. And so the technician knows exactly where their parts are. So when the parts come in, we know exactly where to put them, whether that's us, the advisor, parts person, parts delivery person. So they go right into the bin for that technician. And so when I'm a tech, I walk up to my bin, and the parts should all be in there for the job that I'm working on. So again, steps to improve communication. Use a work order rack flow system. Use the color pouches. It works extremely well. Again, big enough for the keys. So the keys are only going to be in one of two places, in the ignition or in the pouch. We have the customer's applicable questionnaire attached. We're using a color light system, so the technician has a color. Again, Christmas lights work well. We have a bell system, so we don't have to interrupt the technician, or the technician doesn't have to wonder if, oh, somebody came up and they didn't see them. Assign a technician the color pens. That works really well, and using the bins for the technicians. I just found this graphic online, and I kind of liked it, the whole thing about communication. Am I lost? Am I confused? Am I unsure? Am I unclear? Am I perplexed? Am I disorientated? Am I bewildered? And I'm sure if we had a group of technicians, they could talk about how that the information they received from an advisor was poor. I've actually asked that question to many groups of technicians. How many times have you received lousy documentation from an advisor? Things that say fix this, or check noise, or check brakes. Well, why am I checking them? But at the same time, how many advisors have received lousy documentation from a technician where I checked this? I think we should never use the word check ever, unless the customer may be paying by check. We don't see that much anymore. But we want to make sure we improve the communication both ways, as we mentioned, so that nobody is lost, confused, unsure, unclear, perplexed, disorientated, or bewildered. Another thing I just want to briefly look at with the benefits of effective communication, and I think this is very much applicable for us. This was not automotivatized. It was just about communication, but I found it very applicable for us as repair shops. Quicker problem solving. The technician has the information from the customer, so they can diagnose the problem quicker because they have the exact information from the customer in writing. Certainly better decision making for the advisor in trying to quote the job, and better for the technician to make decisions on where they're going to start, and hopefully not at the wrong end of the horse. Steady workflow, we really want that, and again at $3.33 a minute, and the potential of seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars more per shop per year from the same labor rate and the same number of technicians, we definitely need steady workflow, and we don't want all those interruptions. And again, there's lots of reasons why this happens. Again, there could be the noise in the background, and we can hopefully reduce that to the best of our ability. Next is strong business relationships, and that's between the customer, the advisor, the tech, the advisor, and the customer. And I love this part when it says better professional image, and when we fix the wrong noise, when we fix the wrong thing, when we don't fix the vehicle, when we took care of one concern but we didn't take care of the other, where we simply didn't get the information directly from the customer and find out what was most important to them. So whenever those things go wrong, it makes us look very unprofessional, and so we want a much better professional image, and effective communication is going to allow us with that. So now that leads us to the work order rack flow system. This is not a system I developed. It was actually developed in Canada quite some time ago. I believe it would have been Petro-Canada Certigard. TACT is a company that I used to do some training with. They still do a bunch of training. They kind of tactized it, so to speak, and I just kind of took it a little bit further and added the things that I just mentioned. And so the racks that this was showing, and the racks used in those days, actually still being used, are so paper thin, as I mentioned, and on the side of those racks would be a little hook for the keys. And so the vehicle priority would be that the tech would walk up, grab the work order, which is great, put one into the vehicle assigned, but they'd take the key from there, and when they came back with the vehicle estimate for the service advisor, the keys would go there, and then they take the keys again back from the vehicle priority. You'll see where that works, and then the tech puts back into the vehicle completed, and it's on the side of that hook. And then the problem is now when the customer comes in, we need to take it off that hook and put it on the other hook. So I think the little hooks are a hassle. Some of them are so big that we can't really put them on a bunch of bunch of keys in the same rack because they're so thick. But all the key fobs that some people have for every loyalty program out there, and some of their Lucky Charms, etc. And again, those pouches are pretty big. I've not seen a set of keys that wouldn't fit into those. So this system works exactly the way you see it here. Vehicle priority, vehicle assigned, vehicle estimate, which is broken into two sections. It's got hold. We'll explain what that means, or parts waiting. The vehicle is completed, and the vehicle has been invoiced and ready for the customer to pick up. So it is our responsibility as a person on the counter, management or service advisor, to load up the first rack. I love it all beside each other. I've seen some people have two of these racks in one location by the advisor and the rest in the back. I don't like that because I love to be able to see everything at a glance. Some of you are familiar with some of the way that major corporations work with what's called the Kanban system, K-A-N-B-A-N. And if you've never seen it, I suggest that you go to YouTube and check out Kanban. And it's a great system. I've seen TED Talks on it. I've seen, well, one TED Talk on it. And there's many different YouTube channels. And I would recommend you look at it. It's pretty neat how the Kanban system works. It's all visual, and how visual we are. And when we make the work visual, things get done more often, and they get done better when it's visual. And you can see, again, on YouTube, a whole bunch of different companies that use that system. Manufacturing is one, but there's others as well, and project management, etc. And it's a great system. And when I watched Kanban, I thought of this. I thought, this is exactly what this is, really. It's a Kanban system, and it makes it simple. So the ability to see it all at one glance from the advisor or the technician or management, whoever, I can look right at my rack and I can see how many vehicles are already there ready to be worked on, which vehicles have been assigned, which vehicles are waiting to be estimated or waiting for part or waiting for the customer, the vehicles that are actually completed, and then the vehicles that are invoiced. So let's go through this one step at a time. Vehicle priority, that's done by the by the service advisor. Now, I've had technicians, some, complain about that and say that's not up to the service advisor to tell them what order to do the work in. I disagree with that. Now, if it's a availability thing, and I'm asking the technician to do an alignment, and the alignment rack is not available at that time, then yeah, that makes sense. But it's the advisor who has talked to the customer and has made the promises to the customer, and those are promises we want to keep. And so it's up to the service advisor to maintain the vehicle priority rack. So the general rule is nobody changes that order without authorization from service advisor or management. This is where the color-coded system comes in. The system that you're looking at was initially designed with paper clips, as I mentioned. I simply have replaced those with the pouches, and instead of having the thin racks, again, a lot of the ones that you buy are so thin that the pouches will not fit into, and that's why I recommended the ones from IKEA. Now, there are only 3 levels down, so if you wanted more, you can simply put them on top of each other, so you could have 2 across. These racks here, you're seeing a lot of them. Most shops wouldn't need that many. A lot of shops can actually operate with just the 3, but if you do need, you can put them in tandem on top of each other. And so the color-coded system is by technician. So we see red, we see what looks like a pink or a purple, a yellow. I think we should have a green in there because it's easier to see, but it's assigned by the service advisor for the technicians in the order of priority. So if I walk up and I'm a technician, I don't need to see what the first one is and who's going to get it. Sometimes technicians walk up and want to see what the other service advisors are giving, or the advisors giving the other technicians, and thinking they get all the gravy work, I get all the grunt work, or whatever. When I was writing service, we'd hear that. How come he gets that? How come I don't get that? And this kind of reduces that, and they're not really allowed to look to see what other people are getting. That's not your concern. At $3.33 a minute, you simply walk up and you grab the first work order. Now in that pouch would be the keys, and again the drivability questionnaires or whatever questionnaires were applicable, and there's 2 copies of the repair order or the work order, whatever you want to call it. One stays there and the second one goes into this rack right here for vehicle assigned. Now it doesn't show it here, but here it would show right in here, it would show us who the technician who's got that. So the nice thing about that, instead of saying, let's say red is Ted, instead of walking into the base to see which car Ted is working on, I could just look up here and we would have his name right beside there, Ted Kelly or whatever it is. Oh, sorry, go back to where I was. Didn't mean to do that. Back up here from beginning. I should have done that differently. Back to where we were. I've got a new mouse that I'm working with here. It's not mine, actually. Like I said, I'm out of town right now. But so the technician simply grabs the work order. There's 2 of each. They take it out of there. They take 1 copy, put it into this vehicle assigned. And again, it doesn't show it here. In your notes, you actually have the entire PowerPoint presentation. I didn't want to go through that entire PowerPoint with you. There's a lot of text in it, but if you want to go back and see more detail on each of these, you've got the entire full PowerPoint presentation that's got all the text. My concern here, of course, was doing the visual. So let's say this is Ted. Ted comes up. He grabs the first work order that's related to him. There may be 3 of them in here for him. There may be 3 his color, but he takes the one on the top. That's the highest priority job. The exception to this rule is if you've got a job that is the highest priority of any, maybe it's a comeback, and sometimes you want the comeback to go to the same person. Sometimes you don't want it to go to the same person. Sometimes it doesn't really matter. If there's a job that's the absolute highest priority, no matter who's next gets it, our recommendation is you put that on the top, and you can use the, let's say, the white colored pouch. Now the pouch itself, they're all clear. They're clear colored. It's the zipper along the top that's colored, and they do have ones that are white. And so your rule might be, if it's a white one, you grab it. So if I walk up and I'm Ted and there's a white one above this, I don't need to turn to the advisor and say, are you sure this is mine? It's mine. So I grab that. I put a copy beside my name, in this case Ted. I put the copy of the work order there, and I head off to the base. So let's say that it's not a white one. Let's say I'm Ted. I walk up and I grab the very first red one that's there, and I simply take that, and then I take my copy to the bay with me in the pouch. The thing I like about the transparent pouches as well is they can read everything through the pouch, and so you're going to have less greasy fingerprints, etc., on the information to and from the technician. Now, of course, if they're going to write in it, great. And again, with some of you, you've got electronic system, which is with tablets, so you don't have to do it exactly this way. Now, there may be a way to enhance the questionnaires from the customer. I mean, I've been a customer where I've been in businesses and they say, here's a tablet, and they ask you to fill in your information right on their own tablet. So we could have a customer fill in an electronic questionnaire, but that's kind of rare. In most cases, it's still going to be handwritten. And so even though the information is going to the technician electronically to the computer in the bay that they use, whether it's shared or their own tablet, there still needs to be keys. And so the keys would go into the pouch, hopefully with information specifically from the customer. So Ted, let's say I'm Ted and I grab that, and let's just say for illustration purposes it's a brake inspection. So I take that, I read the information, and not just the fact that it says check brakes, but I know why I'm checking the brakes. The customer didn't stop as quickly as they thought they should. They're hearing a squeaky noise, squeaking noise, a screeching noise, a grinding noise. There could be they just bought the vehicle and they want to know the condition of the brakes. They're giving the car to their daughter or something and they want to make sure the brakes are in good condition. Maybe they just bought the vehicle and they don't know the condition of the brakes. We want to know why the customers asked for a brake inspection. There's dozens of reasons why we'd be doing a brake inspection. Let's let the technician know why that is. Is it a noise? Tell them. If it's grinding, tell them. And if there's no symptoms, it's just a safety concern, then tell them that as well. So I'm Ted, and I walk up and I grab this work order there. And again, my copy goes right there beside my name. So there would be Ted, let's say John, Samantha, and Fred. So I grab that, I put it right beside my name. I should really only be working on one car at a time. Now, if I do, for some reason, end up working on something, now you can't physically work on two cars at the same time. You'd have to have two cars in the bay at the exact same time and one hand on each. That's not what we're looking at. Sometimes they start on a job and they, let's say, start a piece of machinery that's going to run for a half hour for a flush or something. Then they would punch off of that in the back and they can just keep that work order back there, okay? So there could be a rack back in the base for the technician, not that they need a whole rack, but so in a sense they could be working on two vehicles, so there'd be two copies here, but you would know that the technician is got some equipment running on that one, etc. So they could, in some cases, have two work orders in here. But let's go back to the brake inspection. So I've completed the brake inspection, and I know exactly what the customer needs. They need a brake job, front and back. They need calipers, rotors, etc. So I put it into here under vehicle estimate. So that's the pouch with my written communication. Again, if you're using electronic with tablets, the keys still need to be there. So the service advisor knows that the car is back there. We want to make sure that we know where the keys are. They're not going to be in the car, especially out in the parking lot. I can tell stories about that. I won't get into that right now. Now this is where the light system, color light system can work. I walk up, I'm Ted, I've done the brake inspection. The advisor's busy with a customer. I do a quick bell ring. I turn on my red light in this case, and I grab my next vehicle, put that into the vehicle assigned rack. So when I've done the brake inspection, I come grab that work order or repair order from vehicle assigned, I put it into the pouch with my copy of it, and then I grab the next work order, whatever the next job is, that's my priority, and I put it into the vehicle assigned rack, so that you know you can see what I'm working on right now and the vehicle estimate. So I walked up, I rang the bell, I turned on my light. The advisor's busy. They turn around. Oh, that's Kelly or Ted, and oh, I see that there's something right there in the red pouch. Again, the pouch is clear, but the zipper is red. I won't mention that again, but I want to make that clear. So we know that's Ted because he's red. And so now I know that there's something that needs my attention for a vehicle estimate. And so I read it, I estimate what the brake job's going to cost, and I'm waiting for the customer's authorization, so I put it under the section where it says hold, and this PW is parts waiting. In this case, it's not parts waiting, I'm hold. Maybe it's the customer's authorization I'm waiting for. The customer wasn't available on their phone, or they didn't see my text. If you're texting, we're waiting to hear back from them, so it's there. Now the customer calls and says, yes, go ahead and do that brake job. I'm good with that. So they've authorized the job. It'll stay there. I order the parts, and so now it's sitting there still, parts waiting. I know that I've already contacted the customer. I've indicated that in my scheduling system or my shop management system or in the work order itself in writing. And now it's waiting for the parts. Now the parts have just arrived, so I grab that estimate or that recorder, I should say, and I simply take that and I put it back in the order that I would like the technician to complete that. So now Ted is working on a vehicle, and let's say this particular one that he's now working on is now completed. He puts it into the vehicle completed rack and maybe turns on the light, rings the bell if that's applicable. And so now he puts the vehicle into the completed rack, and it's not going to be the brakes, it's going to be another job from earlier, obviously. And then he goes back and he looks in the vehicle party, or he says there's that brake job, it's sold and estimated and sold. And so it's now, he puts it into the vehicle assign rack beside his name, and then heads off to repair the vehicle. Now when those brakes are done, the old ones are out, new ones are in, I put it into, or sorry, Ted puts it into the vehicle completed rack. And again, Night Bell system, if you want to use that, or they're there and they say, okay, that one's done, put it into the rack. We don't need verbal communication. They just can see, the advisor can see that it's in the vehicle completed. Again, the Bell system can help with that if they're busy. And then simply goes back to the vehicle priority rack, takes the next job, puts it into the assigned rack. And then, so again, the key with this is we can see exactly what they're working on without walking into the bay to see what Ted's working on, what Fred's working on. I could just look right here and see exactly what they're working on. And then the vehicle estimated, again, is something that's waiting for the service advisor's estimate or information back to the customer. Maybe it's not an estimate. Maybe they didn't find anything wrong with the vehicle, so it goes right back into here, and the vehicle checked out fine or whatever, so we communicate with the customer. So again, the vehicle priority, it's color-coded by technician and the priority that they're going to do it. They don't need to look at other jobs that they're going to be doing. Now, if it's bay availability problem, like I mentioned with the alignment rack, so I can't do that one because in alignment, the rack's not available, then I would simply leave that one there and grab the next one. That is my highest priority, and put it into the vehicle assign rack beside my name. Vehicle estimate, again, is when the technician has diagnosed or diagnosed or inspected the vehicle is not done. It needs the service advisor's attention to contact the customer and or order parts. But when I am done that brake job, as I mentioned, it goes into the vehicle completed rack. The advisor looks over and sees that under my color, Ted, red, that job is now done. I take the documentation. We do not call the customer at that point. We don't call the customer until the vehicle has been invoiced. And I can tell you as a customer, I've experienced where I've gone to a shop, shops plural, to pick up my car, and it was done. The car was ready to go, but the paperwork wasn't done. In fact, sadly, at one shop I went to pick up my car, and he was handwritten system in the day, but he was still working on the estimate for the job. So he had sold it to me without even knowing what it was going to cost. And I can tell you a lot of shops will work on a car, diagnose a car, inspect a car, repair a car without telling the customer how much it's going to cost. Some of you would be mortified by that, but I can assure you a lot of shops still do it that exact same way. And I don't believe that we should call the customer until the paperwork is done. And so the vehicle completed, again, the keys are always here, whether it's in this rack, this rack, this rack, this rack, or this rack. The keys are always in the pouch, no little hooks on the side to deal with, color-coded by the color of the technician. In the vehicle completed rack, the advisor grabs that. Okay, that vehicle's done. It's exactly what we estimated to the customer. Maybe I contact the customer either by phone call or by text, and I can say, okay, your car's ready to go. It'll be ready, sorry, it's ready now. What time would you like to pick it up? It's completed now. What time would you like to pick it up? And they say, okay, 5 o'clock. And how would you like to be paying for that today? And I can get it printed off. They choose MasterCard or Visa or whatever, and you can indicate that and print it off right then and there. Now, there's situations where they come in and that credit card didn't work or it got declined or something went wrong and need to change it. Well, then you simply need to re-enter it. So you could just save a little bit of time simply by having the customer tell you how they're going to pay. So now it's in the vehicle invoice rack. We've indicated how they're going to pay. They come, the pouch is right there. The original drivability question is there. The information to and from the technician is there. The final invoice from the customer is there, and the keys are right there. And I've been in shops that use this exact same system, and I can assure you that it works like clockwork. It's a great system. It reduces verbal communication. And if you want to know the acid test to find out if you really need this, what we call the silent half day. And that means if you want to see how good your written communications are at your shop, you practice what we call silent half day. Now, that doesn't mean you don't talk to your customers and have a sign up that say, we're not talking today. We're talking about non-verbal communication between the advisor, the tech, and back to the advisor. And if you can run your shop without verbal communication, we don't need to talk about the work. And the tech could walk up, grab the next invoice, go off to work, use the system without verbal communication. You know it's working well. And I've had people, many people who've come back and say they tried it and half hour into it, 20 minutes into it, they thought, forget it. This is simply not going to work. But if you could literally run your shop with very little verbal communication, more written communication, and again, if you've got the tablets and communicating to the tech, that's even better. But if you don't have that, we recommend that you use this exact same system. And of course, the racks are still going to be the same if in fact you have an electronic system, because we still need to have the keys, as I mentioned, but you want a final invoice for the customer as well. And we want to see the notes from the technician, of course, unless it's done electronically. So again, just one last time, the vehicle priority is assigned by the service advisor in the order that the technicians will work on them, color-coded by the technician. They walk up, they grab the work order that has their color along the top, and they take one copy, put it into the vehicle assign rack. They take the pouch back to the bays with the keys and the questionnaires from the customer, and they go through the process of diagnosis or inspection. When that's done, they put it into the vehicle estimate rack, maybe a bell, as I mentioned, and the light. And then the technician simply, without having to talk to the advisor, grabs the next work order. And by the way, I should say one thing clear. When they walk up after they're done that vehicle, they take out that information. I said it, but they have to take the sheet out of the vehicle assigned rack and put it into the pouch with the rest of the information. And then they take the next vehicle priority in their color, take one copy out of the work order hard copy, put it into the vehicle assign rack so we can see exactly what the advisor is working on, or the technician, sorry, is working on. And then the technician takes that, puts it into vehicle estimate, which means it needs the advisor's attention. But if the vehicle is completed, it doesn't need to go back to the advisor to get an estimate or order parts or whatever. It goes right into the vehicle completed. And again, they're always taking the sheet out of the vehicle assigned, putting it into the pouch, grab the next one, take that next pouch in priority, take out one copy, put it into the vehicle assigned rack, and then head off to work on the vehicle. And it's the service advisor's responsibility to take that final invoice, put it into that pouch with the keys and all the documentation. So if the customer has questions about what the tech did, we can pull the information right there. So again, this system works extremely well, and I want to encourage you to change the way you do things maybe, and change habits. We get into habits. An expert says that it takes 21 business days to break an old habit and form a new one. And so if you're not using a system like this, I'm going to encourage you to try it. I do encourage you to not make many modifications to it. You want to make some maybe, but I've seen people try to do this with 2 racks instead of 5 or 3 racks instead of 5. I don't recommend that. You certainly don't need as many down as we see here. Again, the system from IKEA, we don't have to have a whole bunch of racks down unless we have more technicians, but there's nothing wrong with one technician putting the work order in the top rack and another technician behind it, another one behind that. That's fine, as long as it's very clear to the technician which job is mine and which is the first one you want me to work on. That is mine. And so you can go with 3 down or 6 down, whatever. It's IKEA, they're 3 at a time. You can't buy 4 that I know of. Again, they're magazine racks, so don't look in the office department, but the magazine rack. And they're very professional looking too. They're very, they look great. They're just very appealing. And by the way, the system is very appealing. When a customer walks into your shop and sees this system here, they know that you really have your act together and you're a very organized shop, and an organized system like this is an indication that you're organized in the back as well. So thank you everybody for going through this process. And by the way, if you want to download the presentation to your hard drive, I did do a little short webinar on that, but it's really simple. Just take the link that you're watching here on YouTube and go to a website called keepvid.com. So K-E-E-P, like keeping something, vid, short for video, keepvid.com. Cut and paste the same link you're looking at right now, put that into keepvid.com, click download, and below there on the left-hand side, you're going to see save as. I suggest that use MP4 format because it's the best format available right now on YouTube, and it'll automatically download that to your hard drive. You do not need to go in there where it says, do a trial or something. You do not need to enter any information at all. They may want you to buy it, but you don't need to. It's a free service to do what we're talking about. So just take Control-C to copy that link, Control-V into keepvid.com, and click download. Go down to the MP4 format, download it to your hard drive, and then you can watch this video whenever you want without having to be online. My email address, kelly@kellythecoach.com. And again, thank you very much. I do encourage you to go back, implement this, and what you're going to see is your time is going to be better used. It is definitely going to help you increase your productivity, your efficiency, and your proficiency, the combination of those two things, productivity and efficiency, and hopefully see yourself going from an average shop to an above average shop, or maybe from an above average shop to an awesome shop. And again, it's a better system for reducing verbal communication, less noise, less lack of understanding what somebody meant, and it's also far more professional. It's going to go a long way in reducing your stress as well. And with that, I wish you luck, and if you've got questions, please email me, Kelly@kellythecoach.com, Kelly@kellythecoach.com. Thank you.